Welcome guys to Frack We Got Here, a show that takes events of that makes sense out of it all. I'm your host, most weekend, on this show. We simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of limitations out there that simply want to in short, inform you. Hear how the Frack We Got Here. That's all we believe. We go to the left, to the right, to the independence. We go to all sides because there's more than one side of the story to everything. And you need to know it all. And that's what we try to do. How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening. And hold on. It'll be fun.
On Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. If the governor of Illinois would call me up, I would love to do it. Now, we're going to do it anyway. We have the right to do it because I have an obligation to protect this country. And that includes Baltimore. I saw where Governor Moore was asking me to take a walk down the street of Baltimore. Well, Baltimore is a very unsafe place. It's rated number 4 in the city, one of the most unsafe places anywhere in the world. But, you know, we took care. This was a beautiful thing that happened in Washington because we showed.
Imagine, if you will, if you thought DC was bad, if you thought Taco invading California was bad, now he's trying to take his Gestapo world tour to Chicago. Not just Chicago, but another place too. But anyway, welcome to How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. Today's date, September the 4th, 2025. Do not adjust your calendars. We are coming to you on a late Thursday evening. Why? Mother Nature decided to knock us out on Wednesday night, so I apologize for the delay. But hey, we're live and we're here, so let's get to it. We do pride ourselves on being a news podcast, a news site for most reputable sources with award-winning journalism. We do not do sensational news like Fox News, The Blaze, wherever you get your extreme left or extreme right views. We simply do not do that. At the same time, guys, we do try to maintain a sense of professionalism, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Sorry for that welcome. But yes, we start off with Taco again taking his Gestapo/National Guard U.S. tour from D.C. to now Chicago. But not just that, he also may go to Baltimore. I wish I could make this up.
So we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago or do we go to a place like New Orleans where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of this country that's become quite tough, quite bad. So we're going to be going to maybe Louisiana, and you have New Orleans, which has a crime problem. We'll straighten that out in about 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks, easier than D.C.
See, it amazes me the level of BS that Taco can just go to at a moment's notice. And I apologize. I know I said Baltimore, but he was talking about New Orleans in that clip. But at the same time, he did also mention Baltimore. He also mentioned, think about it, Chicago, Baltimore, and now Louisiana, specifically New Orleans. And yet he is trying his hardest. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an occupation straight from a certain, let's just be honest, it's from a Nazi playbook. It's all it is. That's why I have no problem saying that Taco might as well be a Nazi. He's following the playbook to a freaking T because he didn't clean up Washington, D.C. If anything, he harassed the people there. In the last podcast, we talked about that Washington, D.C.'s crime rates, similar to Chicago's, are also lower, very much lower. So much lower, in fact, that there really isn't a reason to go after him. But because Chicago did have 58 people shot over Labor Day weekend, he's using this, as most Republicans do, whenever it comes to gun control. They always go back to Chicago. Oh, look at Chicago, the strictest gun laws in the nation, and yet violence is up because criminals don't follow laws. What Republicans also are not saying is that the reason why Chicago has so many guns is because they come from Indiana and other southern states where gun laws are a little bit more liberal. That's the thing that Republicans will never say, that the guns in Chicago always come from areas in lower states where the laws are not as strict. So again, criminals don't follow the law, which again, that's one of those things they love to say, that criminals don't follow the law. Okay, then again, a criminal did not do the last mass shooting. It was someone who was disturbed, and yet if more legislation was involved, they would have not had access to firearms. In the same sense that a disturbed individual decided to shoot up a church and kill children had access to firearms. Do you see where I'm getting at? Is they always say criminals. But at the same time, the greatest tragedies and crimes that have happened were by people who were obviously disturbed, but had access to firearms. But they love using Chicago as their lightning rod, their straw man argument. Chicago has the strictest gun laws, and yet their violence is up highest, not realizing that violence in Chicago has actually dropped 17% in the last couple of years, dropped 17%. And yes, the Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, should be concerned. And why should he be concerned, you ask? Because why else would he choose September to literally and figuratively invade Chicago? Well, it's because it's Mexican Independence Day. Because Chicago has Mexican Independence Day events during that month. So it is amazing to me that Taco would choose September to invade, and I say invade and occupy Chicago, because he tried to invade and occupy Los Angeles, which we'll have a story on that in a minute. He invaded DC only because DC is not seen as a state as the rest of the other states are, because of a legality that he can occupy a city for 30 days, which again is still crazy to me that no one's ever enforced it except him. And now he's trying to occupy Maryland. Now he's trying to think about occupying New Orleans or Louisiana. And here's the crazy part. Here's the real crazy part. If it's a red state, it'll be allowed. Because again, everybody wants to, those red states, those Republicans, they all want to be Trump fellatio cheerleaders. Because I can't say what I really want to say, because even though it's 11 o'clock the same night, but we're going to go with it. They want to be fellatio cheerleaders. They really do. And it amazes me so that he says, well, we cleaned up Washington. You can clean up Washington. I mean, because again, whenever it comes to crime and things of these nature, he always try to put spin on it. Well, look what we did in Washington. Look what we did in California. You didn't do anything. You sent in the National Guard, unarmed, then armed. Then you sent your Gestapo ICE in there as well, so they can still continue to pick up so-called criminals when they're really picking up people of color and trying to deport them as fast as humanly possible, because your Nazi right arm Stephen Miller has decreed it so. So let's be honest. He's basically taking his National Guard Gestapo U.S. city tour the same way he was rallying and still rallying as if he's trying to run for president all over again. No good will come from this, especially if Gestapo and the Gestapo ICE and the National Guard do try to occupy Chicago. It will not end well. But at the same time, they can do like the good folks California did and run ICE out of the city. That was a beautiful thing to watch. But the only reason why I think that might have a little bit of halting is because a judge finally ruled what we already knew, that it was a legal use of Taco to use the National Guard to invade California, and a California judge ruled on it.
Well, Morgan, earlier today, a federal judge in California ruled that Trump's takeover of Los Angeles was illegal. Now, this past June, you may remember, the president deployed 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to L.A. after thousands of people took to the streets to protest the president's immigration policies. Well, meanwhile, people have also flooded the streets in Chicago. This happened yesterday. This was all in an effort to stop Trump from expanding his federal law enforcement surge to the Windy City. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander joins us now from his post following all of this. So first, let's talk about this ruling out of California. Now, what does it mean? Does it have any implications for what's to come?
Yeah, Vicky, it's a good question, and this has obviously been a very contentious topic. This crime crackdown that the president has enforced, first in Los Angeles, California, and now he's discussing not too dissimilar crackdowns taking places in places like Baltimore, in Chicago, and in other Democratic-led cities. Specifically to the ruling by this federal judge, they found that President Donald Trump, his administration, violated federal law by sending those National Guard troops to California. In effect, the decision did not require that those troops depart, and its enforcement will begin. The order goes into effect September 12th, so just a couple of weeks from now. But it does come after there was a huge flashpoint there in Southern California over the arrival of these national law enforcement officials, the National Guard. We're hearing from Gavin Newsom, the Democratic governor of California, who had been pushing back against this effort. He posted in all caps today, "Donald Trump loses again." So this gives you some sense of where the courts are on this at the moment, but certainly it's something that needs to play out further. And it's something that's going to continue to remain a flashpoint as the president considers other cities and states where he wants to do similar efforts.
So again, it amazes me that we all knew that he weaponized the National Guard, knowing he couldn't. But again, because he has a majority and the GOP is going to do everything that their golden calf wants to do, and Taco really does believe that he's making a difference. So yes, I am glad that California is put in the picture. I'm glad that Gavin Newsom is finally doing what really should have been done. With all due respect to Michelle Obama, when they go low, we fly high. And now it's time to go subterranean. It is. You can't beat. I said the only way you beat a bully, honestly, is to basically punch him in the mouth. And that's what the governor's doing. I'll give him credit for that. And people are actually starting to do that. But you can also fight not just using hands, using legal as well. Because, yeah, Trump knows all about legalizing Trump knows all about court. He spends the majority of his life in court being sued or trying to sue somebody else. And at the same time, the judge did actually give a ruling that, yes, you cannot use the National Guard in this way. And it might take a while. Like I said, September 12th, so it's 8 days from now, which again still may affect whoever Taco may choose to try to occupy again. But of course, yes, his people will fight over it. And yes, there'll be appeals because that's all he knows how to do. But it just goes to show you folks that nothing is done out of this except a scare tactic to target people of color, to target those that, may have some difficulties getting citizenship because they don't make it easy. The immigration system in America is caca. And they have no obligation to fix it. Let me stress that again. The immigration system in the U.S. is caca. And they have outside the Democrats with the DREAM Act, there has been no action on the Republican side. And I say it all the time. Republicans do not want immigration unless it's to basically line the pockets of their lobbyists. Hence why farmers are crying, "Oh, we can't get our crops. We don't have enough help," because ICE is picking them up. But now you want to bring them back in with certain visas like green cards. So again, shouldn't be surprised that this is what Taco's trying to pull. But at the same time, proud that he is being held to a standard. The fact that you do have those out there that are trying to resist and protest things of that nature. Here's what I say. Sometimes the best way to get people's attention is to affect their bottom line. And if you really, a simple Google search will show every company that ever donated to Taco's campaign. All I can sit there and say is, what if you just stop buying from said companies? Again, you hit them where it hurts. You hit somebody in their wallet more than their face, you do get their attention rather very quickly. Hence why this next story makes so much sense. And again, that should be an I told you so. That, those in the SNAP benefits frustrated over its elimination, as if you waited till now. And I hate to say this, and it's been said multiple times, not just by me, but other people, but people never pay attention to the world around them until it affects them. And now folks who are, were benefiting from the SNAP or supplemental nutrition assistance program and education are no longer getting it, are a little bit pissed. Because again, it's the start, because that stupid, big, beautiful bill that Taco and his people were talking about is going to be great. Didn't realize that inside that bill, which again will affect SNAP on October 1st, will not only start limiting who can get benefits, but will remove people who have been benefiting from SNAP, who've been getting food stamps, cash vouchers, things of that nature. All of that, there's going to be at least 1 million people that are going to get kicked off of that. And those are the same people right now who are not happy. But it's amazing. They're saying, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? It's never ceased to amaze me that when we try to, it's like myself and others out there in the news world who do our best to turn around and inform you and saying, hey, if we allow this SOB to push forward through this bill, people who get SNAP benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, you are all going to be kicked off one by one. And it's amazing to me how many times we've said it. As a collective group, we've all said this. We've all tried to throw out the warning like, hey, if they push this through, and I've said it here. I've actually said it here on the show multiple times. It is political career suicide on the Republicans' part because they know this bill is caca. This bill only supports the rich and the 1%. Everybody else will be screwed. And it's amazing to me. That's why now they're trying to do gerrymandering and redistricting for the midterms, because somehow they were like, oh, crap, people don't like us. And they don't like the fact that they're going to lose their benefits. They're not going to like the fact that they lose their food stamps, their vouchers. They're not going to like any of this. I thought we were in the clear. And now the gerrymandering starts. We have to shore up our Republican majorities because we can't lose the House and the Senate next year, which, again, if Democrats get the shit together, could actually pull off and make the last 2 years of Taco's administration very difficult. But at the same time, I have sat there and said, people don't pay attention until it affects them. You can shout it from the rooftops, but until they get a letter that's saying you no longer get SNAP benefits, until they get a letter that's saying your cash vouchers have been taken away from you because we've determined you are an able-bodied person to work. Imagine telling anybody from 50 to 75 years old, because they're pushing the age for retirement back. They're pushing the age retirement up. And you imagine you are 50 plus years old. You should be looking forward to retirement within the next year, within the next couple of years or decade. And now you have to work. Not because of the fact that your Social Security, which you've been paying into, has now pushed the retirement age up. Now your 401k, which was looking great because Wall Street had a field day, is not looking good. And, you may have some physical ailments or you even might be disabled. And now you might get a letter that turns around and says, we determine you're able-bodied, you can work. So therefore, the benefits that you're enjoying will no longer be granted to you. It's amazing to be pissed, but we also said before the big, beautiful bill, before the election, we all said it. If you elect this man, it's like giving a villain a second shot at taking out the movie. And I said it before, Taco has learned. He has learned from his first time running with the show. Hence why he hasn't surrounded himself with the smartest people. He surrounded himself with loyalists. And that's what enabled him to act dictatorish. He's not a dictator. He wants to be one. Mad that, he didn't get his British invite when China, Russia, and I forgot one other state all decided to get together for a dictator powwow, and he was mad that he wasn't invited. I know that diary is about as hot as a shade room. But anyway, speaking of Taco, we're going to stay on him for a while because he's not having a great week. Still is fighting the fight to make sure that a voter ID law gets put into place. Republicans have tried this, and yet this broken clock keeps on ticking.
Trump says he plans to sign an executive order requiring voter ID for all U.S. elections. Trump posting on a social media platform, Truth Social, writing, voter ID must be part of every single vote, no exceptions. He goes on to call for restricted mail-in voting and only using paper ballots. He said that before. Trump did not say how soon he'll issue that EO. ABC News has reached out to the White House for comment. ABC's Alex Berchet is following this for us live from Washington. So voter ID laws vary state by state. States run their own elections. What's Trump's goal here and why now?
Oh, well, Perry, his goal is a little uncertain at this point. But look, I mean, this is a line that he's really kind of repeated over and over, especially the last few weeks. The president saying that essentially he wants to enact the voter ID laws nationwide, and also he wants to get rid of mail-in ballot voting. What's interesting about this, mail-in ballots are something that became really popular after that COVID election of 2020. And if you look at how they've kind of ballooned, they comprise about 43% of the turnout in 2020, and there are a number of states, primarily along the West Coast, that relied on them heavily for the 2024 presidential election. But one of the things that the president has been critiqued on as he's talked about getting rid of mail-in ballots is that this is a direct response to some of those Democratic-controlled states like California, where Governor Gavin Newsom has called for a special election to counteract some of the redistricting that's being done in Texas, with redistricting there in California. Well, California relies heavily on mail-in ballots. This is looked at by Democrats like Newsom and others as an attack on those states. And so this will likely, Perry, be challenged in court.
So to kind of put a bow on this, first and foremost, it's an executive order. Executive orders are like, I wish for this to happen, but that's it. The voter ID law, which again, this has always been the GOP, because you know why? The GOP believes that illegal immigrants vote. They will tout this lie. Illegal immigrants have influenced elections. How? Because yes, voting ID laws can vary by state to state. This is true. But every state has this one requirement to basically vote in an election. You have to have ID. You have to have ID, whether it's driver's license, a state ID, or U.S. passport, depending on the state. But every state has the basic rule. You must have some sort of ID. If you have an ID, you can vote. That's it. Well, as long as you're not a felon, but again, that goes to a whole other story. But the basic rule is if you have an ID, you can vote, no problem. Taco is trying his hardest to set the goalpost. He knows that most states, especially southern states, have reduced their voting centers. I know here in Tennessee, for a simple example, they've closed at least 3 of them. So at least 3 of them, especially in Middle Tennessee, being closed. So you're going to force the majority of people who usually do, unfortunately, because of life, may not be able to early vote. So they may wait till Election Day, which, by the way, is still not a federal holiday, which would actually save a whole lot of time. You're going to force people to go to election centers that are overcrowded, understaffed. At the same time, now folks are scrambling because, again, if you don't have an ID, you have to go to a DMV to basically get an ID if you don't already have one. This is targeting those, and I say this every day, and I say this with all simplicity. This is targeting those that don't have an ID or elderly. That's all it is. And the mail-in voting, again, mail-in voting was popular, as I said, during the COVID election. Why? Because folks didn't want to risk getting sick versus just to put their vote, but they still wanted to vote. Now, what Taco isn't saying out of all this is he uses mail-in voting. He used mail-in voting, so not for the election versus the former VP Harris, Madam VP Harris. He did not mail-in vote in that one, but he did mail-in vote in previous ones. So it's amazing to me for a guy that used mail-in voting, you are now saying that mail-in voting is bad. Yeah, you're full of crap on that one. And I do mean full of crap. At the same time, this is, again, as I've said, the GOP is trying to rig the game because, Taco can't help but say, "Oh, this is going to be all against me. This is against me. You know, they're trying to set me up." And yet he is trying to set the game. He's trying to rig the table so he can win, come out, so him and the GOP can retain their power come next midterm. We should not be surprised. But at the same time, folks, make sure that you have your ID. Please check the laws in your state to vote. If you don't have an ID, please get one, obtain one. Please look at the laws again in your city and state, because trust and believe, come midterm elections, they will try anything and everything to turn people away, to screw people over, and at the same time ensure that GOP keeps their hold on Congress. But you can definitely help, but be informed. Move right along, guys. Again, the story I shouldn't really, Joni Ernst, the former senator, says she will not seek re-election in 2026, and all I can say is, bitch, bye.
Republican Senator Joni Ernst announcing today she will not seek re-election in Iowa in 2026. The move potentially opening a lane for Democrats to flip the seat in a state where they have not won a Senate race since 2008. For more on this, I want to bring in NBC's Yamiche Alcindor. Yamiche, talk to us about this decision and what does it mean for next year's midterms?
Well, this is a striking decision by the senator, and Democrats, as you said, are hoping to now turn this seat blue, but they have an uphill battle because, as you said, Democrats haven't won a Senate seat since 2008, and President Trump won this state in the presidential election by 13 percentage points. And by the way, all 4 House seats, they're all held by Republicans currently. So Iowa right now is a deep red state, even though it used to be a swing state. That said, there's a big question of why the senator is doing this. She faced a lot of criticism from the right because she openly questioned whether or not she could support the defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, when he was going up for confirmation. He was facing allegations of sexual assault and that he had issues with alcohol. The senator has been a big advocate for sexual assault victims, including those in the military. She also faced backlash because at a town hall, there was a constituent who asked her about Medicaid cuts because of the so-called big, beautiful bill. And she said, well, everyone's going to die, when that constituent was talking about whether or not it would lead to people's lives being at risk. So really, she was facing criticism on both sides.
Oh, yeah, she was facing criticism on both sides, but the heifer could have stayed. Because, again, if you are an advocate for SA victims, you're an advocate if you are literally standing up to never sober Defense Secretary Hegseth and saying you are not capable of basically being the guy behind our nation's defense. If you are saying all these things, and yet your shining defining moment in Congress will always be this.
So they will be coming off. So people are not. Well, we all are going to die. So, for heaven's sakes.
Then on Saturday.
Yeah, your claim to fame. What your claim to fame is basically going to be is that at a town hall, when people ask you about Medicaid, oh, we're all going to die. It amazes me so that that's going to be what people remember you for. And at the same time, I'm sorry, but bye. You basically got paid for doing nothing. You got endorsements and PACs for basically touting the line. You're a Republican. I've said it many times on this podcast. Say what you want about Republicans, but when it's time to vote on party lines, they always do it. And the ones that don't do it are no longer part of the group. It is definitely a mob mentality when it definitely comes to voting on Republican parties. But I don't feel bad for Joni Ernst. I said it before. These people that get put in, especially with the GOP, because GOP has always been for old, rich white men. They've never been for women or people of color. So people call themselves conservatives. Especially black people. I will never understand black conservatives because the literal ideals behind conservatism do not speak for people of color. Do not. But at the same time, I don't feel bad for Joni Ernst because, again, I don't think she would have made it. The Democrats have a chance to flip her seat, but we'll see. But I'm sorry, bitch, bye. Please go ahead. Because anybody that has that tone when you're talking about Medicare and life-saving medication or technology or just anything that can actually help extend a person's life, and they may no longer get it after this big beautiful bill has been passed, and the thing that you say is, well, we're all going to die sometime. How very morbid. May you go out kicking and screaming, you piece of caca. Move right along. The battle between federal governor, leader of the Federal Reserve, Lisa Cook, and of course Taco goes on. Keep in mind, we talked about the fact that Taco has tried to forcibly oust this woman because he believes that on a application for a mortgage, she might have muffed the numbers. Let's also keep in mind this is the same guy that basically was convicted and found guilty of mortgage fraud for nearly 20 plus years. All I can say is teacup, meet kettle.
Concluded a hearing with no ruling in a legal case challenging President Trump's firing of Federal Reserve Board Governor Lisa Cook. The administration's arguing alleged discrepancies on Cook's mortgage documents are sufficient and justifiable reasons to fire her. Well, today, Cook's lawyers fired back. They claim allegations of fraud have become Trump's weapon of choice as he tries to win control of the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Cook denies any wrongdoing. ABC senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer joins me for much more on this. So, Devin, walk us through where we're at on this hearing. The judge is requesting some more briefings by Tuesday. Where are we at?
Yeah, Trevor, the judge today, the first time this dispute has landed in a federal court, declined to issue a temporary restraining order keeping Governor Cook in office. That said, she does want more information next week. Why does she want more information? Well, this is unprecedented territory. Never before has a president attempted to remove a member of the Federal Reserve. It was established by Congress in the 1900s as a body that was to be independent, free from political interference. So this judge, Judge Cobb, really wants to get a handle on the law before she issues a ruling on whether or not Cook can stay in her position. The government today argued that the president has unfettered ability to remove people from the Fed. She, of course, disputes that and the grounds on which the president is using to remove her. But we'll have to see probably sometime next week what the judge has to say, Trevor.
And that's pretty much it. They're trying their hardest. I'm gonna put it this way. Taco, just say you don't like black women. I mean, a black woman did convict you of mortgage fraud. A black woman was about to get your ass for the election interference in Georgia. And now a black woman who, again, a federal governor, Lisa Cook, was not going to bow down because you are secretly trying to dismantle the Federal Reserve because Jerome Powell will not cut interest rates. So you're trying to crumble it from within. So what do? You look to see who you can take out. Of course, being Lisa Cook, being an influential person for the central bank, you look at her mortgage and say, wait a minute, the numbers aren't right. Something's not right about this. I think she fudged the numbers. And again, I say, teacup, meet kettle. See, unlike Ms. Cook, she wasn't convicted of mortgage fraud. Lisa Cook is not a convict. Lisa Cook is not a felon. Lisa Cook does not have 43 counts against her. At the same time, the person sitting there saying, well, we have evidence that, she is corrupt and therefore she must be removed from office. If I'm the judge, I'm like, produce it. But at the same time, I find it interesting that the judge didn't put a temporary reinstatement to say, no, she keeps her job. Because now it looks more like you're personally attacking her instead of doing your due diligence. But again, this is Taco doing everything else except be a president. So yes, we'll follow that story as it goes along, and I don't blame Lisa Cook. Fight that to the very freaking end. Have them, until Taco and them can produce said evidence. I still think she should keep her job. But again, Taco, if you don't like black women, just say that. I mean, they've been kind of owning your ass for like the last couple of years. But if you hate black women, just say it, because we already know how you feel about black people. Except Kanye, but apparently Kanye is not black anymore, but I digress. But sliding off of Taco for a second, we do have to talk about, unfortunately, RFK and what's going on with not only the CDC, but with Health and Human Services. And we'll start with the fact that, well, we might be in trouble because the CDC director has recently been fired.
Trump administration is headed toward another showdown, this time with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director, Dr. Susan Monares. The White House saying it fired her after she refused to leave her post as the top public health official. But lawyers representing the CDC director say that she's being targeted because she chose, quote, protecting the public over serving a political agenda. Monares was just confirmed by the Senate 4 weeks ago, and during her confirmation hearing was very clear about her support for vaccines.
I think vaccines save lives. I think that we need to continue to support the promotion of utilization of vaccines.
But over the last few months, her boss, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has been making significant changes to vaccine policy, leading the White House to justify her firing by saying that she's not aligned with the president's agenda of making America healthy again. Let's bring in our Perry Russum. Well, her firing has led to multiple CDC officials now resigning from their posts. How big do you think this is going to get, Perry?
I mean, yeah, we're talking about the health of the entire country. What information is being used? What information is not being used? Who is in charge? How are decisions being made? This is a major shakeup at the CDC. The head of the CDC fired, leading to multiple resignations. The chief medical officer, the director of emerging diseases, the head of the center that focuses on vaccines, the director of public health data. And there was a letter that was sent from the head of the center that focuses on vaccines. He sent it to his colleagues after resigning, saying, quote, I am not able to serve in this role any longer because of the ongoing weaponizing of public health. A reminder, this is all happening ahead of fall when many Americans are planning to get their COVID and flu shots, Kira.
So Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually did speak earlier about the CDC's issues that are happening right now. Let's take a listen.
What I will say is, President Trump has very, very ambitious hopes for CDC right now. And CDC has problems. So we need to look at the priorities of the agency. If there's really a deeply, deeply embedded, I would say, malaise at the agency. And we need strong leadership that will go in there and that will be able to execute on President Trump's broad ambitions.
All right. So what are those priorities at the CDC right now? What are these ambitious hopes?
Well, right now, the focus appears to be on vaccines because over at the FDA, they have approved the new COVID-19 vaccine for fall, but at the same time, narrowing guidelines on who is now approved to get it. So with these new guidelines, it's anybody over the age of 65, then younger adults and children with underlying medical conditions. So that's really important here. Underlying medical conditions for younger adults and children. But that's not really clear what it means for anybody else, Kira.
Well, this is now the second administration official refusing to resign from their.
Yes, the second, because the head of the CDC, Dr. Susan Monares, I apologize if I destroyed your last name. She was literally the line in the sand because the reason why, because let's talk about for a second and every time RFK talks, I swear on everything that's good and holy, get the man a tea, a lozenge, something. Because my God, every time he talks, I'm like, just cough one good time. You'll clear all that out, I promise you. But here's the problem that I have with this, and the reason why Dr. Monares had a problem with this. Because this is what RFK wants to do. He literally sat there and says that he is directing the CDC to shift its original focus on infectious diseases to move away from that. He wants to go back to infectious diseases, but avoid preventative health. Like programs that are focused on chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, things of that nature. He wants them to move away from that. That he wants to prioritize cloth masks on toddlers, saying that, we shouldn't do that. Or 6 foot social distancing. Remember social distancing? 6 feet between everybody. Remember that? Boosters for healthy children, prolonged school closings. And again, it's just the thing. This is what he is saying, that he has no data to go off of. And even during a hearing, They sat there and asked him. Well, where do you get this from? I mean, where's the data to support that the CDC needs to reverse position on this, and then you go from here? Well, I don't really have that in front of me. He was asked. Here's the crazy part. This man was asked how many lives were lost during the COVID-19 epidemic. He sat there and said, I don't know. You are the Secretary for Health and Human Services. This literally falls in your wheelhouse of things you should know. And he told the committee that was basically grilling him, oh, I don't know. I don't have the data in front of me. Of all the freaking people, I mean, he's already tried to gut the committee for vaccinations. He's already gutted that community, and now putting in his conspiracy theorist and nut jobs. And yes, I'm going to call him conspiracy theorist nut jobs. His RFK is a conspiracy theorist. He has turned around and has literally tried to send. He's already fired over 1,000 former Health and Human Services employees. You have basically forced out the one person in the CDC who sat there and said, hell no, we are not going by this mandate. At the same time, we're supposed to trust him. I don't trust anybody that has leeches on the brain or decides to invade whale carcasses and take them home or drop off carcasses in bears in Central Park. I'm sorry. Trusting RFK with your health is like trusting Ray Charles to give you a shave. And no offense to Ray Charles. He's a talented musician, but I really wouldn't trust that man with a razor and tell him to give me a shave. That's all I'm saying. But here's also the crazy part, that not only we can't sit there and say this is all RFK. Florida has now entered the chat because their Surgeon General wants to remove all vaccine mandates in the state. I cannot stress this enough. The newly appointed Florida Surgeon General wants to remove all vaccine mandates. And here's his crazy ass reasoning.
The battle lines over vaccines tonight drawn along state borders. Florida now planning to eliminate all vaccine mandates, even for schools, although shots will still be available. State Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo.
Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery. Okay? Who am I as a government or anyone else, or who am I as a man standing here now to tell you what you should put in your body?
Among the vaccine mandates that could be erased, measles, chickenpox, polio, and hepatitis B. Medical experts are alarmed.
And we'll continue to accumulate more and more unvaccinated people living in Florida who are under age 5, who will over time become a walking time bomb in terms of a potential outbreak.
3 other states, California, Oregon, and Washington, are forming a health alliance to provide their own vaccine recommendations. Citing the recent firings of experts at the CDC, they say the agency has become a political tool that increasingly peddles ideology instead of science. The Department of Health and Human Services rejecting that claim, saying policy will be based on rigorous evidence. Now even Republicans on Capitol Hill doubt if HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can rebuild trust.
There's just been too much chaos. It's a goat rodeo over there.
We'll hear from Secretary Kennedy tomorrow when he goes before a Senate committee.
And that was what I was talking about earlier, to where, again, he couldn't answer a simple question like how many lives were lost during the COVID epidemic. But yes, imagine that guy. And I hate to say it, Dr. Joseph Ladapo. And I'm sorry, let me show this again because we really need to see this guy. That guy, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, the Florida State Surgeon General, is the guy saying, we're going to remove all vaccine mandates. Here's my thing. Number one, that's effing scary. Number two, there is a reason why we have vaccinations. And that's what could end. measles, chickenpox, polio, hepatitis B. Here's the problem with all those. They could all make freaking comebacks. They could all make freaking comebacks. You guys remember in Texas, they had a small measles outbreak in Texas because you had idiotic parents. And yes, I will say idiotic parents. And I mean by idiotic parents is parents who believe that their children should not receive all these shots and vaccines and things of that nature, and saying that, well, why do they need all this stuff? Well, I don't know, because we've had outbreaks of measles, chickenpox, polio, hepatitis B, and everything else under the sun. Maybe that's the reason why our children need so many vaccines. Maybe we don't want another epidemic again. And yet, in freaking Florida, the Hold My Beer competition holds strong, because now you're going to have, as the physician was saying, you're going to have walking time bombs. But I can see the people. But here's why I can hear the people who are literally anti-vaxxers. But wait a minute, isn't vaccine supposed to prevent this? Why is my child being unvaccinated such a problem? Because you're introducing a new strain into an environment that was not ready for it. It's like literally sending in a grenade in a room full of people that don't recognize it's a grenade until it's too late. That's what could happen. But it's amazing to me when the guy says, it's your body given to you by God. Who am I to sit there and tell you what to do with it? Dude, that's so not what you're going for. If you want to be a preacher, go to church. You, sir, supposedly are a physician. You are always supposed to be on the Hippocratic oath of do no harm. Protect your patients. But you're going to sit there, again, from a state that questions everything. You being a doctor who has seen science and studied the medical arts and has done residencies and labs and clinicals and all the above, you've probably seen it all, or you may not see it all, or you may be a fake-ass doctor. We're not really sure right now. But the fact that you are sitting there saying the reason why we should not do vaccine mandates is because who am I to tell you what to put in your body? This is how I know what's going to wind up happening in Florida is going to be massive outbreaks. I can only hope that the good parents in Florida still get their children vaccinated. But what that guy said as a physician is not only wildly dangerous, but I question him being the Florida Surgeon General and turn around sitting there and saying the vaccine mandate should be thrown out. I'm just saying. Also, what should be looked at, guys, is the fact that conflict of interest. And what I mean by conflict of interest is that Taco's family is still making money and this man is in office, especially in the world of crypto.
The Trump family is worth about $5 billion more today after launching a new cryptocurrency venture. Public disclosure, so President Trump's family members hold 22.5 billion tokens of World Liberty Financial, which opened trading yesterday. Now the windfall is raising ethical concerns. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze joins me for more on that. Hi, Elizabeth. So what more can you tell us about the Trump stake in this crypto token and how much they stand to profit?
Hi, Dan. Okay, so we're talking about this $5 billion windfall. That is at least on paper. And that's because of the amount of tokens that basically the Trump family has locked in of this digital currency. So just think about a digital currency like Bitcoin, World Liberty Financial, this digital token, kind of like that, but it's part of this broader cryptocurrency venture that the Trump family launched really just weeks before the election. We had seen that on the website for this venture, President Trump and his sons were listed as founding members. Since then, Trump is listed as no longer serving because he is president now as a founding member. But the reality is that they are locked into a lot of these tokens, which as they increase in value, that would increase the value that the Trumps get back. They can't take it out. They can't sell it yet because of the arrangement around this venture, but they are worth a lot more. And as you say, this does raise questions when it comes to conflict of interest and the overall dealings of this president when it comes to business in the White House and his own family's net worth.
Is no one else not surprised? I mean, look, we can sit there and say I'm not surprised, but at the same time, the fact that Taco and his family are making money, and he's in a position, and I said before, it's just like politicians in Wall Street. I do believe if you're serving, whether as a senator or representative, you cannot in any way, fashion, or form sell, buy, or trade stocks. You cannot do it through a third party. You cannot do it through a blind trust. You simply cannot do it because the temptation there is too great. The temptation for insider trading is just simply too great. And at one point, it should have been a law. It should have been a law. If you serve Congress, you cannot be part of Wall Street. There needs to be a wall. Well, technically, there needs to be a wall, a chasm, several miles of water. But you get what I'm saying. There needs to be a wall between Wall Street and Congress because politicians easily have these multi-million-dollar portfolios, but you're also able to get access to things that the average citizen can't get. So yes, there is that level of we need to put a wall between you people because conflict of interest, just like again, Trump's family making money, even though it's $5 billion on paper, but they should not be allowed to do it. And yes, it does raise ethical standards, but again, the GOP is running the show. Will they do anything about it? Nope, not a goddamn thing. This, unfortunately, will still go on until competent people are able to step in, or at least the SEC will step in, but we will see. But yes, this screams conflict of interest. But it also screams that there's money in politics, and the only way you're actually going to clear out politics is to honestly ban lobbying and make it a felony, make it a federal crime. That's really the only way you're going to get out of it. But again, conflict of interest screaming. But speaking of things that are screaming, or I should say heckling, these Republican people kill me. You already know that your party is not favored. Matter of fact, it's not even well liked. And you still hold town halls. And it's getting more and more evident that your own constituents are wondering why the hell we voted you in. And yet, you have idiots like Representative Moore out of Alabama who decided to take a brisk exit because of the questions being asked.
So there are those cases now where they're trying to clean up, and I think we're going to have to look
clean up. What? Clean up? We want them here. We don't want you here. We want them here. Why are people not getting due process?
So,
Why are any prisoners not getting due process?
so due process for a citizen and a non-citizen are different.
False.
False. Lies. The 5th and 14th Amendments allow for it. The Supreme Court has backed it many times. Shame. Shame. Bye, Felicia. I don't think he'll be staying for questions.
Yeah, I don't think he's staying for questions either. But again, it never ceased to amaze me that Republicans think they can have town halls and not expect this. I hate to say it, but your constituents are no longer part of the cult, or at least I think so. We'll find out come midterms. Because again, he's sitting there trying to literally run for governor. I'm sorry. He's running for Alabama. He's running for Senator Tommy Tuberville's seat because Tuberville is running for governor, I think. Yeah, he's running for governor. But what I'm getting at is you couldn't even answer a simple question. And at the same time, well, he gave a BS answer, but you couldn't even answer a simple question. And what happened? The crowd decided to heckle you. And just like that, he just turns off the mic and walks out with his aides. And they didn't even, you didn't even say bye, thanks for being here. Just turn off the mic and keep on walking. It amazes me so, guys, that Republicans still try to have this. They try to have a town hall, but folks want answers. Why are you bowing down? Why are you bowing down to Taco? Why are you giving into everything he wants? We voted you in so you could clean up the mess, not contribute to it. But I always find it interesting that every time a Republican candidate has a town hall, they don't stay long or they are going to hit the exit. But again, not surprised. But a couple more stories before we get to our Feel Good segment, guys. I got to talk about this one because this one is the hottest drop of the year, and it's not an album. Taco cannot escape Epstein. And now that Epstein's victims have come forward, well, it has put enormous pressure on Congress to go ahead and get the Epstein files released. And trust me, they decided to come out, and Taco decided to be a dick. It'll explain itself.
Transparency. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. That's our top story this hour. Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring taking their stories to the steps of Congress. They held two separate press conferences saying they will all work together to compile their own Epstein client list if they have to, while also pleading with the DOJ and the White House to release the infamous files.
President Trump, you have so much influence and power in this situation. Please use that influence and power to help us, because we need it now and this country needs it now. Thank you.
And just minutes after Epstein's survivors finished detailing their stories of abuse right there at the Capitol, President Trump had this to say in the Oval Office.
It's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
Joining me now, White House correspondent Karen Travers, also Justice Department reporter Alex Mallon. So, Karen, we've heard a lot of emotional stories at these press conferences today, but it looks like the president wasn't swayed.
No, I mean, he was meeting with the Polish president at the same time as that press conference was happening up on Capitol Hill, Kira, but he did not want to engage in any questions on this topic when reporters were posing them to him there in the Oval Office. The president repeatedly said that this is a Democrat hoax, but didn't say what exactly about this situation and story is a hoax, and also said that it's completely irrelevant and that reporters should be asking about other things or should be talking about other issues. He said that there should be a discussion about the success that the United States is having right now, not these questions about Jeffrey Epstein. It was notable, Kira, that as the president was calling it a Democrat hoax, there was also that split screen of him on one side of the television and on the other, Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene at that press conference talking about these survivors and the push for transparency. So the president dismissing this as the opposition party, but it is, of course, Congressman Thomas Massey right now who is leading this effort to force a vote to release these files. And he is, of course, a Republican.
Follow up with that, Alex. Massey, congressman, Republican, leading the revolt among the GOP over these Epstein files. Let's take a look at what Karen's talking about. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
I think worth noting that the three signers besides me to the discharge petition on the Republican side are all women. And these are women taking up for women. Where are the men here in the Republican Party taking up for the victims of sexual abuse? None of them have stepped up.
None of them have stepped up, he says. So do you think Massey's pressure campaign is working on any of his fellow Republicans, Alex?
Well, based on his comments, I don't think he sounds very optimistic. Again, now this is called a discharge petition. What Massey needs is for all 212 Democrats to support it, as well as a handful of Republicans to get to 218. And he just does not seem to have that number at his side at this point. This is obviously facing stiff resistance from House Speaker Mike Johnson, who is vehemently opposed to bringing this bill to the floor. And again, even if it were brought to the floor, it would have 7 days, and then it would need to go past the Senate, and also it would end up on President Trump's desk. And the question is whether he would ever, sign something that would direct his Justice Department to release internal files that they typically would never share that type of information publicly with Congress. So you're seeing this back and forth. It's unclear whether this pressure campaign is going to continue to ramp up. We've heard from these victims today. This, I think, was really about getting them their chance to have a voice in this process, because as of this point, they have been largely shut out of it. We've heard, from 3 separate federal judges when the Justice Department went to try and unseal many Epstein-related files. They excoriated the Justice Department for, in their words, not involving the victims in any way in that process. And as you may recall, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche did sit down with Ghislaine Maxwell. There's no record I'm aware of any Justice Department officials in this building sitting down with any of those victims who we heard on Capitol Hill today, Kira.
So what's crazy about this, right? That these are former victims of Epstein that came forward saying that, hey, we want these files released. We want justice. We actually are, we're speaking out as former victims. And also what also wasn't said in there is that Trump said F-16 fighter jets to fly over, which again was cowardly, kind of a bitch move actually. But it's amazing that these survivors are coming forward trying to give their stories, and they're all saying the same thing. We want these files released, or we'll compile our own client list. And that's where it gets juicy, because Taco cannot escape Epstein. He can, I don't know, it's a hoax. There's nothing to this. You can keep calling it a hoax. Doesn't mean that it's not real. It's almost like he's trying to say, if I keep saying hoax, if I keep repeating it, it eventually has to come true. No, Taco, it doesn't. There's pictures of you and Epstein. You wrote letters to Epstein. You obviously must have, your name appears in the files. Just a month ago, your AG Pam Bondi was like, the files are on my desk, and then the files didn't exist, and then the files actually did exist, and then, she's still holding on to the files that didn't exist beforehand, but says, oh, by the way, Taco, your name appears in the files. And again, it amazes me with these Epstein files that are being treated, they're being treated like the golden Fort Knox right now. Oh, we can't release this. Why? And just like Representative Massey did, which I still believe a Republican is trying to push forward this, along with Ro Khanna on the Democratic side, and they are trying to push forward to bring this to a vote. And like Massey said, all women have stepped up and spoke out against this. Where are the men? Well, Mr. Massey knows the answer to that question as well as we all do. The men aren't going to speak up, because we've seen what happens when you speak up in a mob. You become a rat. And we all know what they do with rats. Not to say that Representative Massey is a rat, but he'll be seen as pariah. You went against the grain. You went against our golden calf. And now you may not be here. You may not be here come midterms. At the same time, the same doggone time, where are the Republicans, are the men staying forward? Because if you're expecting Speaker of the House Mike Johnson to do anything, you might as well let that go. That man is his lips are literally attached to Taco's buttocks. That's not going away anytime soon. I do not expect Lindsey Graham or any of those other men on the GOP to step forward. It's amazing that Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, I did not have that on my bingo card, standing up and saying that these files need to be released. I keep expecting her to change her tune every day they have a talk with her. But it's the Republicans. The Republicans, and that's why Massey and Connor are trying to force us to a vote. If they force to a vote, then they have no choice. But here's also the rub, though. Two rubs. One rub is, if this does get on Taco's desk, he will obviously veto it. And then it goes back to Congress. Congress will need 2/3 majority vote, and we'll have to force a signature by Taco to get this done. And there's also the second part. His AG Pam Bondi. She runs the Department of Justice. She is the most incompetent AG this side of William Barr and Jeff Sessions. I guarantee above all else, in the snowball's chance, they get the vote. And the really close to snowball chance passing a son if they get it to pass. And if somehow, some way, Taco vetoes it and they get an overwhelming 2/3 majority vote, and he has no choice but to sign, expect Bondi to drag her effing feet. Expect her to slow walk the Department of Justice on this, which is why I'm hoping that those former victims, I am hoping they come up with a client list on their own. Well, Clinton's on that list. And what? Because Clinton's a Democrat, I'm supposed to, maybe we shouldn't do it because it's self-mutual assured destruction. No. Everybody that partied with Epstein that is on that client list should be exposed. Whether the Democrats, Republicans, independents, celebrities, whatever. You went to that man's island and probably did some questionable stuff. all the more reason why you should be shown on that list. So no, I don't care if Clinton's on there, cool. If Garfield, hey, go for that. If Snoopy showed up, sure. Again, everybody on that list should be freaking exposed because there are victims that are still looking for justice, and you have an entire political party that would rather remain silent than do the right thing. And that should tell you everything you want to know. But the last story we got, guys, before we get to our feel good segment. Again, we talked about Sesame Street and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting losing its funding, which means it will effectively shut down majority of its operations the coming year. And that it did this includes shows like Sesame Street that's been on for 60 plus years that have done nothing more to influence and teach kids and even encourage kids to higher learning, things of that nature. We all thought that was very sad. I am happy to report, guys, before we get to this MSN article, that Sesame Street, along with Netflix, along with YouTube, will be able to see the entire library for Sesame Street. So again, guys, it is great that we're still getting that. And I'm not complaining because I grew up on Sesame Street. My kids watch Sesame Street. They are not just Sesame Street, but Arthur and other shows that are on PBS have been nothing but great educational tools for children. That being said, Taco decides that he wants to use PragerU as the alternative to PBS. And I'll just play the video.
Public broadcasting will be largely shuttered by the end of next month and gone entirely by January. At President Trump's request, Republicans in Congress canceled its federal funding last month, and that spelled the end of the organization's half a century of supporting public radio and television. Now, much has been made of the impact that these cuts are going to have on local news stations, particularly in rural areas. But the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has also played a huge role in supporting high-quality educational programming on PBS, where Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood originated. And where that legacy of iconic educational programming lives on with the Mr. Rogers spinoff, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, and programs like Sid the Science Kid and Word Girl. Meanwhile, the White House appears to be eyeing an alternative to these kind of PBS Kids programmings that teach kids social, emotional skills, science readiness, and literacy. PragerU is an unaccredited, non-professional organization founded by conservative talk show host Dennis Prager in 2009. It specializes in creating right-leaning, short educational videos for children and adults, but don't mistake it for a university despite its name. The organization does little to hide its intent to indoctrinate children with right-wing ideology. And on the bottom of its website, you can find the following disclaimer, quote, PragerU is not an accredited university, nor do we claim to be. We don't offer degrees, but we do provide educational, entertaining, pro-American videos for every age, end quote. According to Vox, in July, the White House debuted an educational partnership with PragerU at a launch event for a new museum exhibit. Now, the thing about PBS and PBS Kids, which made parents trust their programs, is the fact that education professionals and early childhood development specialists played a vital role in producing and developing them. Sesame Street, in particular, was designed to help low-income and minority students aged 2 to 5 overcome some of the disadvantages that they traditionally had when entering school. In fact, a 2016 study found that children in households who were exposed to Sesame Street were 14% more likely to be enrolled at the correct grade level for their age at middle and high school. So to put it simply, PBS Kids is programming in the public interest. It's improving society while your kids are watching TV and you're off doing something like washing the dishes. The payoff may not be immediate, but the impact is long-lasting. PragerU's content is already being deployed in 10 states across America, including Florida, Arizona, and Louisiana. These partnerships allow PragerU's materials to be used in public school curricula while not mandating it. But one of PragerU's most loyal supporters happens to be the state currently ranked 50th in education, Oklahoma. This week, Oklahoma announced it will require teachers from New York and California to pass an America First test designed by PragerU before being hired in the state. The state's public school superintendent said the test is an effort to root out, quote, radical leftist ideology from classrooms and warned that Connecticut, Illinois, Minnesota, and others could soon join the list. So what's so concerning about PragerU funding champions of PragerU finding champions in the White House and in other states? I'm going to let you be the judge.
The southern colonies were dependent on slave labor, and they wouldn't have joined a union that had banned it.
Are you okay with that?
I'm certainly not okay with slavery, but the Founding Fathers made a compromise to achieve something great, the making of the United States.
Most gender stereotypes exist because they reflect the way that men and women are naturally different.
One of the most beautiful things God has created is a woman's smile. It can fill a room with energy and joy. Just try smiling and see how it affects the people around you.
Chicago is a bustling metropolis famous for food, fun, and an iconic skyline. But beneath those tall buildings, Chicago has a dark side and a long history of crime, poverty, and low-performing schools.
Slavery is as old as time and has taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? I don't see the problem.
I don't see the problem. Wow. That's what some children in America are learning. I'm joined now by the Democratic State Representative of Oklahoma, John Waldron. Before entering the political arena, Representative Waldron was a social studies teacher in the Tulsa Public School District. I'm also here with my colleague, Antonia Hilton, co-host of MSNBC's The Weekend Primetime, author of Madness, Race and Insanity in a Jim Crow Asylum, a remarkably important book. I had to ask my producer several times about those PragerU videos to make sure we weren't being punked. I had to ask them, is that real stuff that is being shown to kids in America to teach them in lieu of PBS?
It is. In fact, Allie, just last weekend on our show, we had an educator who's also a state representative in Oklahoma named Gabe Wolion. He has used PragerU content in the classroom. So if you're wondering if the video you're showing right there, this, retelling of slavery from Christopher Columbus's point of view, what you heard from fake Frederick Douglass there, if that's actually been used in the classroom, I have met educators who have started to integrate this kind of stuff with young children. And I want to point out one thing, because a lot of people have paid attention to that Christopher Columbus clip where he says, that being taken as a slave is better than being killed, and he doesn't see a problem. Not only is that an opinion and a sort of form of propaganda to put in front of children, but actually primary source documents from slaves themselves that educators across the country have access to completely undermine that. People who were enslaved spoke very often about the fact that they were willing to put their lives at risk, willing to die in order to escape plantations in the South. Frederick Douglass, in fact, attempted multiple escapes, and he famously got engaged in a physical altercation with a notorious slave breaker who was trying to dominate and harm him. And fighting back when you are an enslaved person is something that, again, they knew could end their lives.
Yep.
And so it's actually not just a little wrong. It is really insidious. And I say that as a journalist who's covered this, that simply the facts, the records, primary and secondary source documents that we've had access to for many years in this country go against so much of the programming that is getting in front of children. When I've spoken to educators about why they would use this, they say, well, it's about alternative perspectives, or, some of the documents we have are liberal perspectives, and this is a conservative one. But it's really not that. There's the truth, there's the reality of what slavery represented to the United States. And then there seems to be this major push that's been gaining steam for years now to recast the entire American story, to resist feeling guilt about what happened and what was a central part of our founding. And it's really alarming for the educators who are being pushed to use this stuff, for the parents who are finding out their kids are exposed to it. And it's having a real impact. You just spelled out it's in 10 states already, but I've spoken to Dennis Prager. I know their team. I've visited their headquarters in California. They have a 50-state strategy.
Yeah. Oklahoma's got real issues in terms of education. I mean, it's not that people...
I'm just going to leave it right there, just because, again, that was... And I talk about PragerU. This isn't the first time we talk about PragerU on the show. That's scary. Alternative education. See, here's the thing that kills me, that America never... And I say this as a black man. America never wants to talk about the dark times, where history doesn't always show it so bright. It always never ceases to amaze me that when it comes to, it's almost an air of white nationalism or white supremacy that, you know, white people never did anything wrong. They came to America. They did have slaves, but, you know, black people owned slaves too. And, you know, we're not going to talk about how we massacred the Native Americans, how they saved us. And that's the reason why I have Thanksgiving. Or, you know, the Trail of Tears, we basically took their land and forced them away from the reservations. We're not going to talk about the fact that we've incarcerated Japanese Americans in the internment camps on our own soil. Or just recently, we're going to try to forget the fact that we had multiple children from immigrant families sitting in ICE detention centers like cattle. It is amazing to me that America never wants to talk about the dark times, but you know what they always want to talk about? That we pulled ourselves from our bootstraps, that every decision we made was the right one, and we led the world as being the #1 nation. That's nationalism. That's supremacy. And that is something that simply cannot be taught to children. Because again, you begin the entire cycle of racism, bigotry, and just overall Nazi mentality all over again. And that's what PragerU's doing. They're trying to make white people not feel bad about history. But I'm sorry, your ancestors did do a lot of shit. And you know how you stop that? And you honestly know how you stop the cycle? You have to acknowledge that it happened and teach cultural sensitivity and teach what happened during the civil rights era. Teach what happened during periods of slavery. How most black people do not see July 4th as a holiday. We see Juneteenth as a holiday, because even by the 4th of July, there were still some black people that were still kept as slaves. That literally the U.S. Constitution was not written for black people until the civil rights movement, because we were still seen as a black person was still seen as 3/5 of a human being. The so-called founding fathers were all slave owners. And it amazes me so that when we talk about history, we don't talk about it in the same sense that every other country talks about their history. And that's the reason, outside of many other things, why we have a problem in this country. That education has always been a vital part of it. And the moment that they start introducing, you take away Sesame Street and give us watered down propaganda BS, and it's now starting to be used in schools. And that's the scary part. That the first thing they're trying to do with the next generation is indoctrinate them. And that's what PragerU is. That is BS propaganda dressed up as indoctrination 101. Again, we should all be very aware. But we're going to move on to our Feel Good segment, because usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's Thursday. I know, weird. We're about to go into Friday, so the weekend's coming up. Thank you, God. We want to leave you guys out some good news and some good vibrations, and hopefully this next story will do just that, of an Army cadet and his father saving someone from a burning car. I know, sounds like a movie, but it actually happened.
This morning, the heart-stopping moment. A man is pulled from a car moments before it burst into flames.
Larry, come on.
West Point cadet Larry Pickett Jr. and his father rescuing the driver, all caught on camera. The 20-year-old sophomore was returning from dinner Saturday night with his family in New York City when they came across the crash scene.
We came upon a downed power line. We saw to the left that there was a car that had crashed on the side of the road.
Within seconds, Larry, along with his dad, springing into action.
We saw that there was a gentleman in there that needed our help.
You can see one of the downed power lines as the men carried the driver across the road to safety. Moments later, the car bursting into flames.
You hear it? That's the tires popping. Without thinking, we just reacted and when it helped as best as we could.
I'm just grateful that we got him out, honestly.
You're a hero, sir.
Larry, who plays safety for the Army, says it's all kind of a blur.
It happened so fast, but just going back to what my family's taught me, and just being here at West Point, and them instilling different values in us, like selfless service and the willingness to serve, seeing somebody who needed help and just reacting.
And thanks to that quick reaction, the man who crashed his vehicle didn't suffer any major injuries. Now, West Point says they are proud of Cadet Pickett's heroic actions, and they say that Cadet Pickett, he plans to join the infantry once he graduates there from West Point. But gosh, this young man is the epitome of selfless service. Of course, one of the Army values.
I give him credit because not too many people go right into a car that's about to explode or burn and actually save somebody. So kudos to that young man and his father for actually saving him. And of course, going to West Point, that man can ride his own ticket wherever he goes now. So kudos to him. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know this is live. I know this is a weird time. We usually do this on Wednesday nights. But like I said, Mother Nature knocked out our power. So we're happy to have power back. And we're still able to keep this on track, but still thank you for rocking with us. That being said, some shameless plug before we do get out of here, guys. Shout out to APR TV. Why? Because How the Frack can be seen on there, whether on the Roku channel or Amazon Fire TV. Definitely check them out, as it can all be streamed from yours from any smart device. But definitely check out APR TV. Also, BlurStation.com. Another streaming service, guys, that is for us and by us and deserves not only our viewership, but our patronage as well. Definitely check them out. They have movie, television, and other things coming up down the pipe, especially more news as announcement will follow. But for now, go to BlurStation.com, hit the join now button. It's $10.99 a month to stream Blur Station. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. Also, run for office. You guys have heard me say this multiple times, but again, this is how the people did it beforehand. The Moms for Liberty, the crazy ones, even the Tea Party. I know, a name that has been said in a while. They all went through this process. If you do feel the call to serve, whether it's local or national, use runforoffice.com, as it will take you through all the process of hopefully getting your name on the ballot. You're running for office and hopefully you winning. Because as I said, guys, we all have to be more active because, again, with the midterms coming up, the GOP is doing everything they can to ensure that they keep their strongholds on the Senate and the House. However, Democrats, if you get your stuff together, you could have a blue wave and make the last 2 years of Taco's presidency problematic, but we will see. As for myself, guys, definitely do follow How the Frack We Got Here on all socials: YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, TikTok, all that good stuff. Like, share, and subscribe. I cannot stress this enough. None of this cannot be done without your assistance. And if you feel the need to donate, hey, donate. I'm not going to knock you for it. At the same time, guys, you can also follow me, Black_Spartan615 on the socials. I do love to talk to people. Just don't make it weird. I don't want to start blocking folks. At the same time, guys, I know with everything that's going on right now, don't doom scroll. Go outside. Enjoy nature. It's actually not as hot as it used to be, which means that winter is coming. Thank you, because I am definitely not a summer person. But go outside. Go do something that makes you laugh. Go do something that makes you feel good. Go do something to just enjoy some peace and protect your peace once you get it. Also, check on your people. Text or phone call, or even pull up. Either way, let them know that you care. At the same time, guys, again, with all this going on, get ready for voting. If you haven't already got your ID, get your ID. If you also learn the voter ID laws in your city and state, because they will be subject to change, but be at the ready come midterms, and also help those that may need help themselves. Because again, the midterms is where it all can change. It really can be. But again, it depends upon you. At the same time, guys, as we wrap this up about How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel, guys. We are simply giving you all the information to allow you to make up your own mind. But we do provide a positive perspective, but it goes along with it. We do better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past, making decisions now that we should have done back then. Like electing our first black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first black woman to be the federal Board of Governors, electing our first black woman, and maybe one day that they may be called Madam President. All great things. We don't learn from history. We are doing to repeat, and that's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up at our paycheck? Why are we late to different politicians with the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the Frack got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and I promise we will all get through this. Thanks for watching and still rocking with us, guys. Have a good night. Peace.